Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Hello, world, and welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. We're broadcasting live from the Joy Virtual Studio right here in the beautiful Finger Lakes region of New York State. It is Tuesday, December 16th. It's great to be with all of you today. We're broadcasting live from Rumble, live from Twitter, Spreely TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Substack, YouTube, Facebook, you name it. The Shannon Joy Show available on every podcast platform you can imagine. And we are super pumped to have the beautiful, amazing, talented Inez Annie Cyrus producing the Shannon Joy Show today. I hope you guys had a nice evening. We have a lot to get to today. On the Shannon Joy Show, you see the headline: very quietly under the cover of darkness, Donald Trump pulled National Guard troops out of the great state of California, a blue state, after a judge issued an order saying, well, it's unconstitutional for you to have the troops here. And so that happened overnight, showing us once again that the deployment of Trump's military police state is isolated predominantly to red states. This is why, of course, we call him Trojan Trump or Taco Trump. Trump always chickens out, only this time it is the blue states. Daniel Horowitz has been tweeting about this on his platform over the last 24 hours. And it's something that I've been warning everyone about for quite some time. If you look to where the largest volume of deployment is happening throughout the country, it's not blue states, it's not Chicago, New York City, Los Angeles. It is in the flyover country or counties, deep red states. And it makes you wonder, once these military personnel are deployed and stationed and situated, and we've now normalized a quasi-police state in the United States of America, what happens when the Democrats come in 2026, win back the White House, win back Congress, and seize power once again? We'll have another situation where the apparatus that was built by a right-leaning Republican president is now weaponized and used by the Democrat Party and the so-called enemy to conservatives. And this is why I have warned about Donald Trump and the expansion of the military police state, among other things. So many of his policies are left-leaning, are totalitarian in nature. Only because he's Trump, we're allowing it to work its way through our country during his administration. And this is from Off the Press. And Daniel Horowitz pushed this out. Dozens of California National Guard troops under President Trump's command apparently slipped out of Los Angeles under the cover of darkness early Sunday morning ahead of an appellate court's order to be gone by noon on Monday. Now, I'm glad about that because, as you know, we've been talking about the normalization of the police state, the militarized police state here in this country under the guise of fighting terrorism or narco-terrorism or criminal gangs, illegal immigrant gangs, to secure the border, all of the reasons that Republicans will trot out to their constituents to really weaponize the military and establish a police state in this country, a surveillance state, you name it. They always use these excuses, and they do the most damage, it seems, when there are Republicans in office. Remember, under George W. Bush, we had the Patriot Act, and that set up the apparatus to be used and weaponized by future Democrat presidents and Republican presidents as well. During Donald Trump's first administration, in the last 12 months of his administration, Operation Warp Speed and the lockdown, the executive order, the emergency declaration that was put in place that deployed the U.S. military, against the American people in the lockdown protocols of 2020, the masking, the social distancing, the closure of businesses, the deeming of essential versus non-essential, which shut down down Main Street and funneled billions of dollars into massive tech corporations, creating hundreds of new billionaires and helping to deploy one of the largest transfers of wealth from middle class Americans to the elite corporate class that we've ever seen in the history of the United States of America, but also Operation Warp Speed and the deployment of the COVID-19 shots, which we know now are countermeasures, bioweapons, again, deployed against the American people. Well, the Biden administration took that up, the profligate spending, the money printing, the debt and deficit spending, Operation Warp Speed, the creation of the shots, the rollout and deployment of the shots. The Biden administration came in seamlessly, took up that apparatus and used it to persecute so many Americans in the name of fighting the COVID pandemic. So everything that is started and created under a red president is eventually deployed against we the people by the blue presidents, which is why you guys know I've said for so many years, none of this is real, right? It is a kabuki theater, two sides of the same coin, WWE wrestling. And it's going on as far, until Americans wake up, figure this out, and refuse to consent to this circus, it's going to continue. But I thought that was interesting as we launch Tuesday, December 16th here in the SJ Show. How are you guys doing today? I see everyone on the live chat. CM1968 is with us today. She is the very first. And yeah, Taco Trump is fitting for a guy that needs a quick exit out of the Dodge, in this case, out of California. We also have another statement from CM1968. I have a question. Does Trump know exactly what he's doing, or is somebody else doing the thinking for him, given the fact that it's Sleepy Dawn we're talking about? Very interesting. We're going to go over Susie, who's running things in the Trump White House. Well, there's been a lot of speculation about Susie Wiles, and she has spilled the beans to Vanity Fair. People have been increasingly concerned about Susie Wiles. She's a lobbyist for massive pharmaceutical corporations. She's been embedded in the deep state, in the big government apparatus for decades. And she has a lot of questionable, acquaintances and partnerships. She is now, and obviously she's Trump's chief of staff. Well, what she had to say about Trump and his administration, unbelievable. And this is just breaking today. We're going to get into that in just a moment. A lot of people think that Susie Wiles is running things in Washington, D.C. She's running things behind the scenes for Donald Trump and his presidency, also his cabinet. She looks like a hostile actor, given what she has said recently. So we're going to get into that in just a moment. But you guys see the headlines. We're going to be welcoming into the Joy virtual studio in just about 10 minutes the amazing Jack Gamble. He is one of my very favorite market analysts out there. He has a daily show that runs on YouTube and on Twitter. He is nobody special, but I think he's pretty special, AKA Jack Gamble. And his handle is at JG_Nuke. We are going to look at the markets. We had a lot of numbers released yesterday. Well, today, this morning. Jobs numbers, labor, inflation, all of the data that we didn't get in October or November of 2025 because of the government shutdown. Well, that's all coming out, and it doesn't look good, despite what you're hearing from Fox Business and all the analysts out there and Con Inc. and the Trump administration. Things are looking pretty bad in the United States of America in terms of the economy. And so we're going to get a full report from Jack in just a minute as we try to make sense of all of the numbers out there. I see you on YouTube. Great to see a YouTube commenter. The military in red states will be used for gun confiscation. Wouldn't be surprised. Isn't it interesting, though? These troops are not being deployed to blue states. It's red states and red states only. Great comment from Deepwater One. Great to see you on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube or Twitter, Substack, or Facebook, make sure you comment. Annie is watching the live chats. But of course, we love our friends over at Rumble for the live chat. And I see another comment, Deepwater One. Trump did not pick Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles picked Trump. We're going to get into, I mean, absolute bombshell interview that she just did with Vanity Fair that is just dropping right now. Meanwhile, the Trump administration releases an image, a photograph of his cabinet, his inner circle in the war room, and Susie Wiles looking like, I mean, a villain in every sense of the word. She reminds me of Cruella de Vil with the hair and all the things. Like, I mean, and she's right in the center. Look at that. She is running things. I don't know. This is what she had to say. Are we witnessing a coup d'etat in the Oval Office as she takes control? I mean, she didn't pull any punches. This piece is from, well, Brian Krasestein. You know, I don't know. This guy is a big social media influencer, has a big platform on Twitter. I don't love all of his takes, but he had a good overview of this Vanity Fair article written by Chris Whipple. And I mean, they just revealed stunning details from his conversations with Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff. And it doesn't look like she's going anywhere. This is what she had to say. Wiles said that she has read the Epstein documents. And yup, Donald Trump's name is in them and all over them. Interesting. She said that she urged Donald Trump not to pardon the most violent J6 rioters. He ignored her advice. She said that Trump is looking for retribution. When there's an opportunity, he will go for it. She tried to convince Trump to stop score settling against political enemies after 90 days in office, but the effort failed. I mean, I don't know if she's on her way out or if she's taken things over, but this is, I mean, them's fighting words from Susie Wiles in this Vanity Fair piece. Wiles directly contradicted Trump's claims about Bill Clinton, stating that there's no evidence that Clinton ever visited Jeffrey Epstein's private island. Okay, so completely contradicting him here. She described Trump as having an alcoholic's personality. Wiles said her ability to work with him comes from growing up with an alcoholic father. The sportscaster Pat Summerall on President J.D. Vance. I mean, if you think that Wiles is trying to take Trump out in order to install the vice president, well, she had words about J.D. Vance as well. She said he's been a conspiracy theorist for decades, or for a decade, and that his conversion from Trump critic to loyalist was political. Clearly, we told you that from the very beginning here on the Shannon Joy Show. It is a circus out there. It is a soap opera out there right now. Erica Kirk, by the way, and Candace Owens had a sit down private yesterday. Are you buying any of this? It's more and more like a soap opera every single day. In fact, we have, you know, I don't know. I don't know what to make of all of this. J.D. Vance, his conversion from Trump critic to loyalist, political, driven by his Senate ambitions rather than principle. Well, that was pretty obvious. Ooh, she describes Elon Musk as an avowed ketamine user. You heard that here as well. We've been telling you about Elon Musk from the very beginning. You can't look away from the bizarre behavior of so many of these characters. Again, this is why I call it a circus sideshow, WWE wrestling, not real, and a soap opera. Elon Musk, an avowed ketamine user, and an odd duck. He's an odd duck whose actions were not often rational and left her aghast. She called out budget director Russell Vought as a right-wing absolute zealot. What'd she say? Attorney General Pam Bondi completely whiffed the handling of the Epstein files, explaining first she gave binders full of nothingness. Then she claimed the witness list or client list was on her desk. There is no client list, and it sure as hell wasn't on her desk. Unbelievable. Wiles summed up Trump's governing mindset this way. He operates with the belief that there's nothing he can't do. Nothing, zero, nothing. And wow. Look at those pictures. And so this comes out today. Susie Wiles, front and center, leading the pack, in control of everything. Meanwhile, I mean, just absolutely tearing apart this administration. What do you guys think about that? Unbelievable. The wheels are falling off the jalopy. And it's interesting that Deepwater won. Trump did not pick Susie Wiles. She picked Trump. It does, it makes you wonder if these people that are positioned in positions of power, whether they earn that or if they're chosen. It's just crazy. CJP Rumble, Wiles is in CYA mode. I don't know what she's covering. I mean, is she on her way out? Is this indicative of a lot of turmoil within the Trump administration? Crazy times. Absolutely crazy. All right, let's hit the live chat. Say hello to all of you. What do you make of this bombshell from Susie Wiles? Again, right here on the Shannon Joy Show, we warned you about Susie Wiles in the spring of 2024. Before Donald Trump even won the presidency, she joined his campaign. And it was your girl here, Shannon Joy, that was warning about the infiltration of what appeared to be a deep state operative, Susie Wiles, into the Trump campaign. I signaled to you at that point that it was the beginning of the end. Once that happened, it became very clear to me that Trump was going to be a Trojan horse, that he was already controlled. And I think that is what we're beginning to see right now. Where she goes with this, I mean, that's what I'm trying as an analyst and a PR specialist. I'm trying to gameplay this. Like, what is the advantage of Susie Wiles coming out now with all of this? Is she planning on leaving, or is she planning on seriously taking control? Are we going to see a weekend at Bernie's Biden style Trump presidency in the next couple years as he becomes maybe less visible, maybe less influential? I don't know what's happening, but something is happening. There's no way that this is happening. That this was by mistake or happening without a plan and a strategy behind it. Like, there is something here. I don't know what it is yet. General Patton, Hegelian dialectic, tyrants rule by chaos. I agree. Chaos is the name of the game. Nothing makes any sense. And I think this is why we're seeing the crack up within conservative media as well, as we see, I mean, the warring factions, TPUSA, Daily Wire, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, Erica Kirk, everyone. There's a ton of infighting. But it is now being revealed that maybe they're not fighting as much as we think that they are. Maybe it truly is all about the razzle dazzle. There was an interview with a comedian that I've never even heard of, but supposedly he's funny because he's a comedian. Apparently he was at a party at Tucker Carlson's 2 weeks ago. And, we've all been, I mean, everyone within, the conservative circles has been watching with bated breath the knockdown drag out between the Fuentes Tucker, faction versus the Shapiro and Daily Wire faction. We have, as you know, Candace Owens at war with Erica Kirk. They had a secret sit down yesterday. We don't know what happened there. But, to the point where the ladies in my Bible study, like, we go to Bible study on Wednesday nights, and they're, all Christian conservatives, and all they can talk about is Erica Kirk and Candace Owens and Tucker and Candace and all of the drama. As you guys know, I've been saying for quite some time, I think a lot of this is manufactured drama for influence and money and to drive clicks and engagement. And it appears that might be the case. I want to take a look at this clip before we go to break and bring in our good friend Jack Gamble. You tell me if you think it's all about the razzle dazzle. If virtually everything that we're seeing within not just conservative media, but mainstream news media as well, left-wing news media, we're beginning to see the crossover, right? Erica Kirk given top billing on CBS by Barry Weiss in an interview that was just, I don't know if you guys saw that interview, but it looks scripted to me. That's all I have to say. It just I don't have any inside information, but something about all of this just does not play with me. And then when you hear like the inside story about this fellow who happened to be at a party at Tucker Carlson's house or compound, and what really goes on behind the scenes, it's when you begin to realize that there's a big club, they're all in it, and we're not. And this is what he had to say, Annie. Let's run that clip before we go to break. Yep.
Tucker Carlson's there. Marjorie Taylor Greene is there.
Wow.
Candace Owens is there.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, Lydia, Candace Owens is here. She's like, what? Well, I go, Candace is here. She goes, tell her I'm reading her book. I go, not Candace Bure. Candace Owens is here.
Yeah.
She's like, what?
The other one.
The real one.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And then and then there's like a bunch of Turning Point people there. There's a bunch of like, I wrote down a list of everybody that I saw there. A bunch of comics were there. Brennan Shaw, Theo, a bunch of people, a bunch of MMA fighters in there. And I was like, I go, all right, this is what I always have thought about those kind of things. And I'll just say it out loud for everybody listening. And I've said this before in some kind of context. There was Turning Point people there, and Candace Owens was there. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson. I hate to say this out loud. Everybody friends. Everybody friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, I've heard before about Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we saw like the Democratic majority leader and like the Republican, they're at dinner. I go, yeah, everybody friends.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody like kind of in like, we would see, like, let's say, like Theo's good buddy of ours. He would be like doing something. You're like, oh yeah, it's kind of just for the thing, for their job. They just kind of have to do. They kind of got to be on the sidelines and dump Gatorade on the coat. That's like kind of.
They're entertaining.
That's how that's what their thing is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I go, wait, I thought you because the thing he said about shouldn't you guys be fighting? Mm-hmm. Shouldn't you guys be fist fighting in the center of this party?
Yeah.
Everybody, hey, you want a drink?
Yeah.
Everybody.
Everybody friends. Everybody friends. Infotainment, right? All of it. Circus sideshow, WWE, wrestling. And it's just so interesting that so many people in positions of power today are ex-reality TV stars and, by the way, ex-WWE wrestlers. Yes, Donald Trump is in the WWF Hall of Fame or whatever the wrestling Hall of Fame is. He's in it. All right. Also a reality TV star. You just can't make this stuff up. I'm not saying that I know for a fact about any of this, but more and more people are beginning to take a look at this stuff and say, what's going on here? And I think the faster that we figure this stuff out, the better for this country. We need to withdraw our consent from so many of these people and the things that they're doing to us. Understand that the two-party political circus is that, a circus, and get to the business of taking care of our own communities from the bottom up, our own families, securing our families, preparing for what is coming, whether it's spiritually, financially, and in your communities. But that's really what's going to change things here in this country. And I think, the faster we look away from the entire fracas that is Washington, D.C. and this political circus, the better, because we're going to have a lot of work to do over the next couple years as they implode our economy on our heads. That's right. In the crosshairs of all of this is the middle class, you and your family, your small business, your ability to pursue happiness and to try to live that American dream. It is being ripped away from these crazy people in DC. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Jack Gamble, one of my newest, most favorite financial analyst out there. He has a daily show. It is a must listen, a must watch. And we're going to talk about what's happening within the economy here in the U.S. because there are things that you all need to know so that you can protect yourself. The job numbers are out, and we're going to get into all of that when we come back in a moment. So make sure you keep it tuned right here. We'll be back in a sec right here on the Shannon Joy Show. And Mary and I came together trying to figure out, how we're going to do this show. They were there for us with sponsorship that helped us to put this together and get it on the air. So we are super, super thankful for them. And they have a great new product. I don't know if you guys have ever been struggling, or if you are struggling with mood swings, low energy, or hormonal imbalances. Venus and Mars are two great new products from the Wellness Company. They're doctor-formulated nutraceuticals designed to restore balance, energy, and vitality without synthetic hormones or stimulants. Ladies, Venus supports estrogen and progesterone balance. It eases PMS and cramping while also boosting your energy with clinically dosed ingredients like DIM, maca, Vitex, and broccoli sprouts. There is no fluff and no filler in this product. Now for the fellas, Mars has a product that naturally increases your testosterone, enhances circulation, and improves strength and focus with tongatali, tribulus, horny goat weed, and zinc. And every ingredient is present in a meaningful and safe dose. There are no gimmicks, just clean daily hormone support for both men and women. And I hear it also helps a little bit in the bedroom as well, but we won't go there. If you are a couple looking for a boost, Venus and Mars will have you feeling like you are on another planet. Head to twchealth.com/Mary and use the promo code MARY to get 10% off plus free shipping. That's twc.health/Mary and use the promo code MARY, MARY, to get 10% off plus free shipping. Thank you to Satellite Phone Store, sat123.com/joy, sat123.com/joy. Without their amazing sponsorship, we couldn't bring the show to you every day. And it's always 10% off for every Joy viewer and listener with the promo code JOY. Why do we love them? Well, among other things, the satellite phones, the generators, the solar panels, everything you need for when the lights go out. They also have the most extensive line, one of the best quality lines of Faraday technology, beanies, bags, blankets, apparel. This is a way for you to reduce your body's exposure to EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. And as we know, talking to Dr. Williams, that exposure can impact your heart health. And so a regular usage of that type of technology, super helpful. Again, so thankful to the Satellite Phone Store, among our other sponsors. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome into the Joy Virtual Studio one of my favorites right now. I don't know what I would do without my daily Jack Gamble, aka Nobody Special, aka at JG_Nuke on Twitter. He has a daily show looking at the markets and finance. Jack, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Glad that you could be with me today. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Shannon. Thank you for having me back on.
Oh, absolutely. I think the word of the day today for me is fake, 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 fake. Everything is fake and lame, and nothing is real. It seems more and more people are realizing this, not just in politics, left versus right, bleeds out into other areas as well, particularly the economy. And that's one of the reasons I think you're one of the best out there right now. You're not reporting on financial matters from a left or right perspective. You are firmly in truth every single day. And it was really evident today as you were going through we've had an avalanche of numbers dumped on our heads because they withheld them for 2 months because of the government shutdown. But, your ability to go through these numbers and look at them from the perspective of the average American and how they're going to be impacted, outside of all of the manipulation and the speculation and the backroom deals and the government connections, the political connections, it's just like filtering through right to the truth of the matter. You do that every day. So thank you very much for that service. I highly recommend you guys follow Jack on YouTube and also on Twitter, where he runs his daily morning show. It's about an hour long. His handle is at JG_nuke. I just want to give you that plug so that people can benefit from your analysis every day themselves. But really appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. I appreciate it. And, you're right. I think when it comes to finance and economics, it's very important to not look at it from a left-right perspective, to turn off the spin. And people lie, numbers don't. When you scrutinize the numbers, you can figure out what's really going on. And today it didn't look very good.
Yeah, no, we're going to get to those numbers in a moment. But before we go there, something that you mentioned on this morning's show, and I've heard you mention before, if we can kind of take a broad perspective and then filter down. You talk a lot about the Austrian school of economics versus the Keynesian school of economics, and a rational perspective of an economy, any economy, versus the government manipulated or politically manipulated, Keynesian school of economic thought. And I was wondering if you could start there, the difference between the two here in the US. When you listen to anyone discussing monetary policy, if you go to any of the economic schools, any of the universities, or you listen to anyone on, C-SPAN or MSNBC or even Fox Business, a lot of them are they're analyzing everything from a Keynesian perspective and a Keynesian lens, which is the only thing that we need to look at is the manipulation. What do we need to inject here and pull out there and inject in this place in order to manipulate the economy? It is fundamentally flawed. And I don't think people really understand how that basis fraud or, flaw is it's keeping people from understanding what to do in their own life with their own finances, and it's keeping them from understanding what's actually being done to us, which I'm concerned about in the next 2 years. So that's a really bumbling and fumbling way of introducing this. But if you could help explain this before we get into the numbers so that people can begin to learn how to protect themselves.
So, the two main schools of economics are Keynesian and Austrian. Keynesian economics dominates academia. It dominates the financial media, government policy. And, there may be academics who could give a better explanation than me, but the primary beliefs, at least with the Austrian school of economics, is that there's a natural boom bust cycle with the economic theory, right? The boom, markets go up, employment rises, and then the bust is the recession. And that in my opinion, it resembles nature, right? The way certain species operate when they thrive, they reproduce, their numbers grow, but then they start to exhaust the food supply, and so their numbers naturally decline. And you have this natural ebb and flow. Same thing with forests. You get growth, then there's a drought, you get a forest fire. Okay, the fire burns away, but that replenishes the soil and it eventually comes back. There's a natural cycle to things.
Right.
The fundamental belief with the Keynesians is that when those natural downturns happen, the government can and should step in with extra spending, fiscal stimulus in order to prevent those downturns. It's in my opinion, the arrogance that recessions can be made obsolete. And kind of like we see with the way they manage forestry on the West Coast, when you prevent any kind of controlled burns, when you can prevent any kind of forestry industry, you end up with these raging forest fires that are out of control. Because, yeah, maybe you don't get the smaller spot fires every now and then, but the ones you do get are brutal. And so I think the problem is really for 50 years at least, the Keynesians have been in charge. And every time things get bad, the government spends. And then that inevitably leads to the government borrowing. And when the government has borrowed all the money in the world runs out of money. The central bank, the Federal Reserve, prints it and loans it to them. Mm-hmm. And so the inevitable result of Keynesian economics is endless expansion of the money supply and thus endless inflation. And that's why for the last 50 years, life only ever gets more expensive, even though before the Keynesians took over, life always got cheaper. Believe it or not. I mean, we look at things now because most of us have only lived during these periods where life gets more expensive. For hundreds of years, life was getting progressively cheaper. The dollar was getting increasingly valuable. As technology improved and labor productivity improved and people, the prices went down over time. There was abundance. And unfortunately, the Keynesians are like, no, that doesn't work. Then we can't print money and give it to ourselves. So we're going to create this endless cycle of debt and monetary expansion instead. And that's resulted in what we have now, what's described as a K-shaped economy, where very few people do very well and everybody else just is constantly being bombarded by a higher cost of living.
Right. Isn't it just an excuse they use? I mean, you alluded to this. I mean, the Keynesians will say, well, we're doing this for the people out of the benevolence of our heart. We want to make sure that you're okay, Mr. and Mrs. Middle Class, when the downturn comes. But isn't Keynesian, I mean, when you talk about the people who control the printing presses and the creation of money or fiat currency, really, it's just an opportunity for them to grift and plunder and stuff their own pockets, which is what we're seeing. It accelerated over the past 5 years. To your point, I think that we've been in kind of this 50-year descent, and now we're kind of in the final stages of it. But isn't it all about plunder, cheating, rigging the game so that they never lose? It doesn't matter if they pick right or wrong. They never lose. The losses are always dumped on the backs of the American people, their pensions, their 401ks. Daniel Horowitz calls it venture socialism, where they never ever lose. Do you see it that way? Have you seen that in terms of your analysis?
Yes, there's a couple of ways, and this is why I think they, us is more important than left, right, or red, blue. There's an economic theory called the Cantillon effect that says the people closest to the money printer see the benefits first. And the people closest to the money printer are going to be the central bankers, the bankers, thus by extension, Wall Street, and by extension, the politicians who Wall Street controls. So they'll always tell us it's for our own good that they're going to turn on the money printers, even though their own good happens way before our own good ever happens. They don't mention that. And really, there's an excellent website if you live in charts and you want to see this played out over time. There's a fantastic website called WTF Happened in 1971. And there's some 1971 is when we went off the gold standard. That's when money printing became the law of the land. And there's one particular chart. It's a few down if you scroll down on that website that shows the economic productivity of an hour worked versus the average wage. And they tended, for the first 100 years, 200 years of the country, they tended to go up in tandem. As the average worker became more economically productive, his wages rose. In 1971, when the Keynesians really took over and started printing money, the economic productivity continued to rise. The average worker continued to generate more and more economic activity from his hour of labor, but his wages stopped going up as fast. And so he was getting less and less of that, because the furthest man from the money printer, according to the Cantillon effect, is the wage earner. The asset owner and the banker is much closer to the money printer. And ever since money printing became the law of the land, they do the best, the wage earners do the worst. And so, the asset owners, the people who are making the decisions to print money, they're telling us it's for our own good, but the data says otherwise.
I'm seeing a lot of Republicans and GOP senators and congressmen talking about eliminating property taxes at the local level, right? So property taxes are levied at the local level, homeowners, business owners, you name it. And all of a sudden, that's the big bad guy. And everyone's kind of excited about it. I'm a little bit wary of this because, well, it's a tax that is levied locally, which grants local community members some type of local control over where their money goes, and it funds their police and their firefighters and their roads, like the actual things that governments are supposed to do, in exchange for maybe addressing the inflation tax or the tariff tax or the federal income tax or state income taxes. There are all these these taxes before those locally levied property taxes that I think need to be addressed. But the biggest one, to your point, is the inflation tax. I mean, that is, to me, the most insidious and deceptive and horrifying and terrible tax of all of the taxes, because it impacts everyone except for the elites that are close to the money printers. And it disproportionately affects people who are on fixed incomes, poor Americans, Americans who are trying to pursue that American dream. It is the worst, but no one ever talks about it.
Yeah. And honestly, Shannon, they're kind of the same thing. What you just described, like the hidden tax of inflation versus this push to eliminate property taxes. A property tax because what we have this situation where we're endlessly expanding the money supply, inflating asset prices such as houses.
Right.
Remember, property taxes are determined based on home values, and insurance for a home is based on home values. So as we continue to inflate the money supply, we're also driving property taxes higher because the value of the home is going up.
Right.
Grandma who owns the house outright, her income hasn't gone up, but the value of her house has gone up. She still lives in the same house, but now she owes the local government more money because it's based on a percentage of the home's value. So what the property tax has become because of this endless inflation of asset prices is a tax on unrealized capital gains, to the point where people are being forced out of their homes. Even if they own it outright, they're still renting it from the government in the form of property taxes. And those are rising because of these bloated asset prices. And that's why every year people see their mortgage payment go up. It's the same house. They don't owe any more money on it, but their insurance went up. All the escrow charges went up. The property taxes go up. And so, it is, they're kind of the same thing, the property tax and the inflation tax.
I've been warning my audience. I mean, there is a big push because of the way that they have inflated the housing prices in this country. There's a big push to eliminate property taxes, and I'm going to keep an eye on this. But it's just interesting to me that they're going after the locally levied taxes, which ensure at least some form of local control before actually fixing the problem of inflation. It's, they're addressing the one area where we have a little bit of control left. And so I'm a little concerned about that. And we'll certainly keep an eye on it. Let's move to the job number, or the job numbers and the economic data that has been released this morning for November and December 2025. Speaking specifically to the plight of the average American, the retiree, a two parent household, just regular Americans trying to make ends meet in this economy. What is your overall assessment? There's a ton of data that has been dumped this morning, and you went through some of it. There's some specific areas I want to look at with you, but your overall assessment of these numbers in context of what we've been hearing from this administration, the Trump administration, and conservative media about the best economy ever, the big golden economy. They've solved everything. It's never been better than ever. There is no affordability crisis. Everything is hunky-dory and fine and dandy. How does that stack up to what you're seeing in the numbers that were just released for November and December of 2025?
First nitpick, it was the October, November numbers that were released. Whenever dealing with jobs, we're always looking back at the prior months.
Yep.
That being said, the economic gaslighting didn't work well for the last guy and the girl who replaced the last guy, right? This whole best economy ever narrative, inflation was just an inch, all the things that Biden said, that didn't work for him. Telling people their lived experience is wrong. No, take it from my government supplied data points instead. That's not going to go over well with the average person who sees his cost of living rising faster than his wages. And it's not going to work well for Trump. I don't know what he's thinking in doing this. There's plenty you could say about his economic policy, plenty of bad and plenty of good. There's plenty of perfectly legitimate arguments that he could make, that he could say things like, hey, this is going to hurt, like tariffs, this will hurt in the short term, but in the long run, it's going to be good for the economy. But he's not doing that. He's talking to people like they're idiots, like they're children. And I just don't think that's going to work well for him. So these jobs numbers that came out today were just dreadful from almost any angle you look at it. Now, keep in mind, just to keep up with population growth, no change in unemployment, we would need to be adding roughly 100,000 jobs every month just to tread water. And for the month of October, we lost 105,000 jobs. And for the month of November, we added 64,000. So unemployment's rising right there. You can see it with the big losses in October, partially offset by November's numbers. There was also some downward revisions to August and September's jobs numbers. That's something we also saw during the Biden administration. They'd report the numbers and then they'd quietly lower them in subsequent months. And, the headline is the headline. They don't really go back and change the headline 2 months later. So they also took away 22,000 jobs that were supposedly gained in August, and they took away another 11,000 for September. So all told, we're looking at a loss of 74,000 jobs between October and November, when we needed to add 200,000 just to keep unemployment steady.
Wow.
And so naturally unemployment rose. We rose from 8.4% to, I'm sorry, we rose from 4.4% to 4.6%. Unemployment is rising. Now, unemployment is rising while inflation is rising. We still have 3% inflation. And again, the Keynesians are wrong, because the Keynesians have this thing, the Phillips curve, where they say unemployment and inflation are supposed to be inversely correlated. You can't have unemployment and high inflation at the same time, according to their Phillips curve. Well, the 1970s happened, and now the 2020s is happening. So apparently you can.
Wow.
So, just to continue going a little bit, there's also another statistic in there called the U6 unemployment rate. And, the unemployment rate did rise from 4.4 to 4.6%, but even that doesn't really capture what is going on in the job market. The U6 unemployment rate captures things like people who are only working part-time because they can't find full-time work, but they want full-time work. People who lost their job and just gave up looking, they're captured in the U6 unemployment rate. And that surged from 8.0 to 8.7% from September to November. Again, we got 2 months of data because of the shutdown. That U6, a jump of 0.7% in 2 months, that is alarming.
Yeah.
That is really bad data there. That's unemployment and underemployment.
Right. You know what stuck out to me, and this is just tragic. And we're talking to Jack Gamble. Follow him on the Twitter. It is at JG_nuke. He also has a great show, simulcast on Twitter and YouTube and other platforms every single morning. This was heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. You mentioned buried in that unemployment data, or in the labor data, actually, not the unemployment data, but the labor data. This phenomenon of what you termed the unretired. And this is tragic, okay? Because this addresses inflation as well as the job market. These are retirees who cannot keep up with inflation. They're in fixed incomes. They're living off their pensions. They're living off their savings and their retirement. And inflation has grown to such an extent that they have to re-enter the labor market, but not in jobs that they had before. These are probably low-paying jobs at Costco or Walmart or something, just to make ends meet. They can't afford to live on the retirement that was supposed to cover them for the rest of their lives. Jack, can you speak to that number quickly? Because it's just tragic.
Yep. So the number that got me there was the labor force participation rate, which is, take the total population and then the percentage of the population that is at least trying to work. That's labor force participation rate. And we saw that tick up from 62.4. I can give you the actual number here. It went from 62.4 to 62.5 across those 2 months. So it's not a terribly alarming surge in the labor force participation rate. And you could argue that the labor force participation rate is already too low. So, some might look at that and say that's actually good, more people participating in the workforce. But when I see unemployment rising at the same time participation rate is rising, that's not a good thing. That means more people are entering the workforce, but they're not finding the work. And there's two ways you could get rising participation rate. You could get young people in mom's basement, so to speak, saying, okay, now I finally got to get my butt up and go find a job. Or people who left the workforce, they retired, coming back into it because their fixed income no longer supports the cost of living. And I think we're getting both of those. And, see also earlier discussion about the property taxes and the, people being forced out of their home. I think we're seeing a lot of that there, that people are being forced to go do part-time work. We saw big growth in part-time jobs. Because they just can't afford their pension, their Social Security is no longer enough to cover their cost of living.
Here is another data point that was disturbing. Healthcare being one of the only real bright spots in terms of market growth and health and viability, which is, really disturbing on a couple of levels. But can you go into those numbers for a moment? I mean, what is concerning to me is, healthcare as a growing and expanding market. Clearly, there's the boomer angle, right? Boomers are aging; they're getting older. It's a big population, and so they're going to command, more healthcare services. But we're also looking. This is something that I talked to the audience about in great length during the COVID lockdowns, the rollout of Operation Warp Speed, and the poison shots that injured so many millions of Americans. And that's a phenomenon of a very, very dark, dark type of business model in which you inject or you poison a population of people and then sell them the antidote. And I know that it's dystopian sounding, but you can't ignore the fact that there is a enormous incentive in a new 21st century kind of tech gig economy where the human being, the human body is really the source of so much economic activity, making us sick, then making us well, then, putting us on that cycle of, the antidote, then causing more problems, following us into a natural or unnatural death. I mean, it's a nasty and dark kind of business model. But when you pointed that out as that being like the only functioning or one of the only functioning sectors, that really, really concerned me. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this would have been based on the November, the 64,000 jobs that were added in November.
Yep.
I have the number in front of me here. 46 of those 46,000 were healthcare jobs, and 100% a function of the aging population demographics. Absolutely. This is not economic prosperity. This is, let's put it bluntly, the old people going to the doctor more. Yeah. And so that is really the only sector of the economy that's hiring in any significant number. That is not leading to any kind of prosperity for anyone. Mm-hmm. And besides the healthcare angle, the only other sectors that added jobs, you've got construction grew by 28,000, but that was almost all non-residential construction. That's people building data centers. And I mean, I've ranted about the AI bubble. We don't need to go too deep into that.
We will. I want to go there in a little bit, but yeah, go ahead.
But that's fake. That's being driven by accounting fraud, in my opinion. And I think these data centers that are being built, they're going to be paperweights in 5 years. And so, I don't think that's really a sign of prosperity. That's a sign of fake economic growth, in my opinion. I think that's something else politically that President Trump is going to regret, the way he's hitched his wagon to that AI horse. Mm-hmm. Another category that added jobs, we had 13,000 jobs added in social assistance. Social workers, again, not a function of economic prosperity, right? Social workers don't come to the house when things are good. Social workers come to the house when the family's falling apart because dad lost his job or he's a degenerate gambler or an alcoholic or something like that. I mean, there's the only places where we're doing well are places you don't really want to do well.
Yeah.
And then lastly, the only other significant sector there was federal government workers declined by 6,000. We have seen a sizable decline in federal government employment over the course of this year. So there has been at least a little bit of truth to some of the claims that DOGE was made. A lot of the people who accepted the severance packages several months ago are now starting to show up in the unemployment rolls. Mm-hmm. But, when you look at the sectors that are hiring, not good, not good signs for the health of the economy.
We're going to take a break in a minute. And I think I think what you have just laid out here is truth that everyone has experienced and everyone is feeling. Yet we're not getting this, especially in, conservative media or from this Republican presidency. We're not getting the truth about this. The question is, where do we go from here? Like where it feels as if we're kind of at the end of the rope, that there's not, especially, and we'll get into this when we come back in the next break. Especially with, other countries, a new global understanding of the debasement of our own currency. They're getting fed up with the United States and the debasement of our dollar. There's a lot of There's a lot of hostility towards the U.S. dollar and the U.S. dollar as a national, the global reserve currency. We even had the Russians coming out over the weekend, basically saying that they're on to us. They know that Donald Trump and all the crypto people and the token people and the banking people have a scheme to try to erase $35 trillion in debt and use stable coins and Tether and, all of this funny business to reset our debt and then emerge as like the leaders in the new AI crypto global economy that is backed by Bitcoin. And I don't know what, I mean, there's this grand scheme that's been hatched, but the Russians are coming out and saying, we know what you're doing and we're not buying it. We don't want it. There's a bigger geopolitical thing happening here that I'd like to talk to you about, because I think that people's retirements are in danger. I think that the American people are right in the crosshairs of the plunder that is happening in this country right now. And it's only going to get worse. But I do think that if enough people wake up and are able to protect themselves and their families from their own communities, that we might be able to stave off some of the worst of this. It's not going to be pleasant, but we can still emerge maybe with some relative freedoms and some opportunity here in the country, which is where we want to go with this. So why don't we take a quick break and then I'll let you go. We'll go into the kind of geopolitical aspect of this in the dollar and, the AI bubble, which is a huge part of this as well, because that's the fakery that they're pushing out there to try to convince us that things are okay. And they just aren't. So we'll be back with Jack Gamble in just a moment. Again, his handle is at JG_Nuke on the Twitter. Make sure you follow him and support him and sign up for his daily show. He's live every day on YouTube and Twitter. We'll be back in a moment to continue this discussion with Jack. Just want to tell you a little bit about my financial advisor. He's been with me for over 15 years, Don Polano of PCM and Associates. As you all know, my philosophy on investing is all of the above. So I'm hugely bullish on gold and silver, physical gold and silver, and also the gold and silver IRA. I also love real estate, which I can't get into right now because it's too overpriced. So that's kind of a bummer. But I also have money in the stock market, the good old traditional stock market. Now, right now, I am not in tech stocks at all whatsoever. I have very, very boring stocks and some international. And this is what I love about Don Polano is that he knows, he respects my belief system. He shares my belief system. And for what I do have in the stock market, in those investments for my retirement, he takes great care of me. He helps people all over the country and the world. And he is taking on clients, opening it up to all of you. So if you go to 1-800, if you call 1-800-536-1368, that is 1-800-536-1368. You can talk to Dom and get started. If you are unsure of the politics of your financial advisor, or if you're a little jittery about the stock market right now and you want to move some things around, he is your guy. You can also go to PCMPolano.com to learn more about him. That is PCMPolano.com. It is wonderful to have a financial analyst and advisor who shares my values, and that's Don Polano. You might want to consider checking out Rocket Dollar. Go to www.rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy, and you can get an IRA information packet. You can start investing as soon as your account is funded. And with the self-directed IRA, you can invest in a variety of alternative assets outside of what many believe is a corrupt and bloated, inflated stock market dominated predominantly by the tech companies. So you can invest in real estate in your own backyard, right? In your own community. You can invest in private equity or a startup, even precious metals, gold and silver. They have the self-directed gold and silver backed IRAs, which is real gold and silver that is funded through your IRA. These are all ways for you to use your IRA accounts to your benefit and stop partnering with the federal government. So go to rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shannon Joy Show. We're joined today by Jack Gamble, one of the best financial analysts out there today. And I see you all on the live chat. Opossum King, it's time for a financial awakening. Hell's Bay has this to say: oil prices collapsing, says that the economy is cooked. LT Oracle of Truth, I'd rather use seashells as currency instead of fake Bitcoin. I agree with that as well. Mod Trend, what's the answer? Buying gold, buying metals? Maybe. We'll talk about some answers in a moment with Jack Gamble. CJP Rumble, Sally sells seashells, but don't even get me started on that, CJ. Don't even. I will ruin this show really fast trying to do that. What I don't like, Jack Gamble, is this from Opossum King: there is no financial future. And that's the last place that I want you guys to be. I don't want to be there, and I don't think that we have to be there as the American people. But in the break, we were chatting, Jack, and I was saying, it's also complicated, and this is so hard to game out in terms of the timing of when things are happening, in terms of the players. There are so many propagandists out there. There's so many lies. They've made everything so complicated. And then you also have to remember, the government control over some of these things. Like Bitcoin would never work in a million years because it's absolutely worthless and it's a joke for a million different reasons. But if the most powerful government in the world with the biggest military and all the guns comes in and decides that this is going to be the currency, well, then maybe Bitcoin can do something. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's also complicated. But you said, in the break, really it actually isn't. Once people understand, simpler terms and have a clear understanding of what's going on. Let's start there. Like, how do you game this out? And how do we make sense of all of this with the goal of trying to protect ourselves?
So let me just say, I don't think this is particularly hard. There are some concepts in economic theory that can be hard to get your mind around. But I can tell you the financial services industry uses terms people don't know and acronyms they don't understand to make themselves sound smarter than they really are. They are not. All right. Most of the people I have met that work in the financial services industry are just well-dressed salesmen. They are not the top of the class by any means. They're actually probably more towards the bottom. But they use phrases you don't understand. And most people are afraid of sounding stupid in front of somebody they think is smart. And so they don't ask questions about it. Don't fall into that trap. And these guys, again, they're gifted salesmen, talented. So they're good at using that to make you clam up and just hand over your money.
Right.
The people in the financial services industry give me the creeps. That being said, there are some very simple concepts to understand. And, I do want to address the one comment about no financial future. I see that day in and day out, in particular among young people. And God, I feel old every time I say young people, but there it is. Yeah, can't hide the boat slips. I see them there. They're getting bigger.
Same. It's all right.
If you play by the playbook you were taught, there is no financial future, because like the whole, the bootstraps thing, just work hard and put your money in a bank and a savings account, and eventually you'll have enough money to buy a house. And all right, I get it. That doesn't work anymore. I am 100% there with you. That being said, you want to give up and you want to be treated like cattle the rest of your life, or do you want to try to get off of that hamster wheel that you're on?
Right.
So there are ways off it. They're hard. You have to work hard. That no matter what you do, no matter how good or bad the economy is, if you don't work hard, you're sunk. Unless you're lucky enough to be born with it, which most of us weren't.
Right.
Now there are some things to understand tied in with the government spending and the debt that will make you arrive at the conclusion that I have. The government will default on its debt one way or another. All right, we owe what, 37 trillion? Is it 38 yet? I didn't look. I don't know what time it is. Maybe it's 38.
I thought it was 35, but thank you. Yeah, it's probably close to 38. Yeah.
38 trillion after lunch, I think.
Right.
The government cannot hope to ever pay that money back. There is zero chance it ever gets paid back. So there's two ways they could deal with it. They could not pay it back, just default, not raise the debt ceiling and say, sorry, if you own government debt, you lose your money. That is the absolute collapse of the monetary system and the banking system as we know it, because, hey, fun fact, all your money that's in the bank, chances are it's in government treasuries, which means who do we owe the money to? We owe it to ourselves. That's the punchline. So They're probably not going to do that. The other way they could default is just by endlessly inflating away the value of that debt, right? Inflation helps the government. The people who owe money do better in inflation because the value of what they owe goes down.
Right.
And so that is what they're probably going to do. And even last week on Wednesday, the Federal Reserve very quietly started printing money again. They didn't
Yes, they
say
did.
it. Jerome Powell comes out and he says, we're going to begin the purchase of short-dated U.S. Treasury securities in order to maintain our monetary goals in accordance with our policy objectives. All this word salad for money printing.
Right.
They started that. They just stopped destroying money the beginning of this month. They made it 12 days, not even 12 days before they spun up the printer again. So they're going to keep making the money worthless. So there's a couple of ways you could address that. You could go into the casino in the stock market, which is their game played by their rules that they can change anytime they want. Now, you need to be really smart and really good, which I am not, in order to play that game well. And if that is, unless you have access to the information other people don't, which is supposed to be illegal, although we don't treat it as illegal. Certain people can get away with it. So
yeah.
I don't advocate that. Go ahead, Shannon. You had a question?
I was going to say right in front of our faces. I mean, we're seeing the pump and dumps and the insider trading like
It's a
right in front of
kleptocracy.
our faces. I mean, they don't even hide it anymore. It's grotesque, frankly.
The prosecution of white collar crime is so rare. When it does get prosecuted, the sentences are a joke. People who knock over a 7-Eleven get bigger sentences than people who steal billions of dollars. And yet how many 7-Elevens get knocked over because of those billions of dollars that were stolen? How many families were destroyed and how many people died of drug overdose deaths because their retirement was stolen from them?
Right.
I think that's just, as a society, we need to really reflect on how we treat white collar crime. And then even when we do, even when there are joke sentences passed down, they get pardoned. And I think that's something else that Trump is going to regret, is his pardoning of white collar criminals.
Yeah.
So the alternative, in my opinion, and all these things we described today, the debasement of the currency, is it really any surprise that we're looking at gold trading around $4,300, silver over $60, more than doubling this year?
Yep.
This is not an accident, because if the government is going to inflate away the value of the debt, then that means what they have to do is they have to make sure the rate of inflation is higher than the interest accumulates on that debt, which means inflation is the policy choice of the government. They will keep inflation higher. They might lie about the CPI statistics, but they'll make sure that debt loses value faster than it accumulates interest, which means if you have money in a bank or if you have money in government bonds, you're losing spending power over time. Right. And the big guys in Wall Street figured that out early last year.
Yep.
And that's when gold and silver really started to rally. And what you're starting to see right now is this transition of your traditional retirement portfolio, right? Everybody's got their guy, their finance guy. He probably puts them in standard 60-40 portfolio, right? Everybody says, my guy's good. I trust my guy. My guy's okay. They all put you in the same crap. Right. A 60-40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. The 60% stocks is in the same 7 stocks, no matter who sold you the crap. And then the 40% bonds, that is starting to move over to gold and silver now, because people realize you're losing value if you stay in those government bonds. And so there's been some pretty high profile cases of guys like Jeff Gundlach, Ray Dalio, some pretty big Wall Street investors who have started advocating for some pretty aggressive allocations to gold, 15 to 25% gold allocations in their portfolios.
Wow.
And these are guys who traditionally were 60-40 types. So there's a lot of money moving out of government debt and into gold and silver. And honestly, that's the off-ramp. If you don't want to play in the casino and you don't want to let your money get inflated away to zero and sitting in the bank earning less interest than the rate of inflation, then you have to own physical gold and silver. And this is more and more people realize this every day. And that's why gold and silver keep going up every day. There's going to be ups and downs, pullbacks along the way. There is manipulation. The guys in the commodities market and the futures market can manipulate price to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, there is so much wealth that is about to start hiding in precious metals that they can play games along the way, but the overall, the flow will be up.
Right. And isn't this why, we can talk about gold and silver in a minute a little bit more, and the basics on how to, I talk to so many people, Jack, that very smart people, but they wouldn't know the first thing about buying gold or silver or where to go or what's the split and all that kind of stuff. So we can talk about that in a minute. But to your point, this is one of the reasons you talked about that institutional trading, or, people's 401ks, their pensions, their IRAs, that, these major instruments that they're putting their entire retirement in, hundreds of thousands of dollars, $250,000 or more, and a lot of that investing is just, it's like set it and forget it. It's not some guy who's really thinking about your retirement and making these rational decisions about where to put money. It's just, it's baked into the cake. And this is why Michael Burry made big headlines. He's the great short guy, and huge headlines last week. Essentially, he shorted Palantir, which was a very aggressive short. It wasn't a little short. It was a big short, like the movie that documented what he did during the 2008 housing collapse. But he's kind of betting against, first and foremost, the AI boom and big tech, and the robotization of everything. What Elon Musk is talking about, what Michael Saylor is out there screaming about every day. To the point where Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, I mean, just lost his mind. He's very angry about that Palantir short. But in some ways, it's almost like shorting the United States government itself. I mean, behind that AI boom is the currency, and the currency is wobbling because of so much money printing, and because the rest of the world is realizing, well, they may have always realized this, but now it's so blatantly obvious they don't want to play anymore. And then the bigger difference, I think, the thing that we haven't seen in any of the crises or the collapses since the 1970s, we haven't seen a world apparatus more organized than BRICS, right? Supply lines and trading partnerships, and all of these foreign countries now figuring out, well, what are we going to do when that dollar collapses and we're left holding the bag, or we don't want to be left holding the bag. So, what would you say in terms of what Burry has done, and then the larger geopolitical, consequences of what our government is doing right now, which is just insane?
So, I'm a big fan of Dr. Burry. I've read The Big Short. I've seen the movie probably more times than anyone should have seen that movie. But he is an incredibly smart man with an attention to detail, much smarter than I am. And he came out and he shorted Palantir and NVIDIA. And Palantir and NVIDIA are two companies that have just gone up in a straight line for almost 3 years now. Mm-hmm. And they are the quintessential AI plays. Palantir, nobody really knows what Palantir does. I mean, the CEO's kind of a nut, and he's got every antisocial personality disorder under the sun, and he waves his sword around. He can't sit still in a chair, and he's also probably got the biggest archive of compromat against powerful individuals since J. Edgar Hoover. That's not at all dystopian.
Yes, he does.
But Palantir is valued at like 400 times last year's earnings. That is obscene. The historical average is about 16 for a company in the S&P 500. So just obscenely overvalued. People are buying this crap and they have no idea what they're buying.
Right.
They just don't know. And look, interest rates is the price of money. And we artificially suppress interest rates, which means we're blocking market signals about how rare and how valuable money should be when we artificially suppress interest rates. And when you have this cockamamie monetary policy, you get inefficient allocation of capital, because if somebody's artificially suppressing the price of something and denying you the information about how rare it is, you might go out and waste it, not realizing it's more precious than it really was. Mm-hmm. Like a guy in the desert saying, yeah, go ahead, take a shower. We got all the water we need. And then after you get out of the shower, oh crap, we have nothing to drink now. Mm-hmm. Well, now the price of water just went up real fast in a hurry, didn't it? And so we have never seen a more grotesque misallocation of capital and just absolute incineration of money than we have in this AI bubble. It will go down in history. We will be the punchline of a joke for generations with all the money that we've wasted in AI. And I've been saying this since September of 2023, really, on my channel. I've been screaming this from the highest mountain. And when Burry came out a couple of months ago. It was like late October, I think, early November. He came out with this. I was just on cloud nine to hear that. Like I finally felt like there was some firepower behind the message, and it made people take a hard look. Some of these AI bros that out there, they made money betting on these stocks as they went up. They think they're smarter than Michael Burry. Trust me, you are not smarter than Michael Burry. Even if you made money on Nvidia, you are not smarter than Michael Burry. I promise you that.
Right.
And that was actually pretty close to the top. You know, the top in these AI stocks was towards the middle of September and beginning of October. And they've started to pull back now. I think we're watching this bubble burst in real time.
Right.
And there's a long way lower from here. A lot of money has been wasted, and there is a reckoning coming. And you know, you talked about 401k allocations and set it and forget it. People don't realize they own this whether they realize it or not. If you've got a pension, an IRA, or a 401k, you are invested in these stocks. Because call the fund what you want, the target date this, the value add this, the markets this. It's all in the same 7 stocks.
Right. Well, and that's why that I again I bumble and fumble through this because I'm not as smart as you, and I'm not like financially, I don't know all the acronyms and the terminology, but that was what stuck out to me. Michael Burry put out a statement saying essentially that he doesn't trust the apparatus, like the apparatus that is running Wall Street and controlling trillions of dollars in wealth, retirement wealth for the American people. That he doesn't trust that there's anything there, that and so it's a large, and I want to say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, this was a major position for him. It's like 60% of his net wealth or his holdings, I saw, or am I overstating?
There was some misinterpretation of that when it was found because he reported in what's called a 13F filing when he ran his hedge fund, which he has since closed, by the way. But his hedge fund, he took out this short position on Nvidia and Palantir. And when you buy a put contract, which is a short position against a company, you're basically buying the right to sell 100 shares of the stock at today's price between now and some other time. So you're betting the price is going to go down. And when they report this in the 13Fs, they report the total value of the shares underlying those contracts. And so it tends to make the position look bigger than it really was.
Okay.
He didn't bet as much money. The value of the underlying shares he has a right to sell at that price is that big, but that wasn't the size of his bet. His position was actually a lot smaller. I've made that mistake in some of the earlier days of my channel. I made that same mistake misinterpreting a 13F. It's pretty easy to do that.
Okay.
But that being said, it was a sizable short position on those 2 companies.
Yeah. What do you make of the BRICS nations, Russia, China, India, South Africa? I'm seeing in the live chat here, some people are speculating that has to do with the turmoil that we're seeing in Venezuela right now. Like the larger geopolitical apparatus doesn't seem to be as willing to play ball with the US and our dollar as they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. How does that impact? Because typically we've always been able to inflate our way out. We've always been able to print more and convince foreign countries to buy our debt and continue to do so. But it looks like that fat lady is singing, and that's not going to work as well as it used to, if at all. And what are your thoughts there? And could that hasten the collapse here in the U.S.?
The jury is out on hasten the collapse. It depends on what happens here. Let me just say, I hope it doesn't come to shooting in Venezuela. I truly do. I've had enough of the killing and the wasted money on things that go boom.
Yeah.
That being said, you're right to lump Venezuela in with BRICS, because I do think what's happening in Venezuela, it's 100% oil. They're using drugs as the cover, and I'm sure there are drugs coming out of Venezuela. Sure. That's not why we're doing it. All right. The Sackler family at Purdue Pharmaceutical killed more people than Venezuelan terrorists or narco terrorists have. We're not firing Hellfire missiles at Purdue Pharma's headquarters right now. All right. So, it's about oil. Venezuela has the biggest oil reserves in the world. And we are gearing up for this conflict in the South China Sea over Taiwan.
Yeah.
And there are major weaknesses in the U.S. military industrial complex. We cannot produce missiles fast enough. We cannot produce ships fast enough. And we're getting ready to fight a naval conflict with the Chinese over Taiwan. That's not good. We learned in this conflict in the Red Sea over the last few years. Number one, our ships are really good. Our missiles are really good, but eventually you run out of them. And, we were shooting down $20,000 Shahed Iranian drones with $2 million SM-2 interceptors in our ships. The numbers don't lie there. Eventually we lose that. Now, luckily, none of our ships got hit. The Navy did a fantastic job, but it was not a win what happened in the Red Sea. We pulled out because we knew we needed to preserve ammunition for a conflict with the Chinese. And so what we showed the world is that if the Iranians decide to do the same thing with the exact same equipment, because the Iranians gave the Yemenis what they were firing at the Red Sea, that they could shut off the Strait of Hormuz, and with it 25% of the world's oil supply. Whew. And our Navy cannot reopen it. They'll run out of missiles they need to fight the Chinese. So if we're going into this global conflict, which it really looks like we're heading towards, unfortunately, we better have an alternative plan for oil. The biggest oil reserves in the world is right to our south in Venezuela. It's not a mistake that all of a sudden we're demanding regime change in Venezuela. That is about securing the flow of oil in the event of the Iranians shutting down the Strait of Hormuz because of a greater global conflict with the Chinese. 100%. And, BRICS, as far as the subject of BRICS goes and them wanting to get off the dollar, I don't doubt they want to. But getting off of the dollar is a lot like a teenager that wants to move out on his own. I don't need mom and dad. I can do whatever I want. I was that idiot a long time ago.
Right.
It sounds great. Sounds like a great idea. And then you go to do it and it's really hard because nobody wants yuan. Nobody wants to pay for their oil in yuan. Nobody wants to accept yuan for the rice that they grew or for the grain that they grew. And certainly nobody wants to take rubles or Indian rupees. And so you need one currency that all parties engaged in will accept in order to have efficient global trade. And right now, the dollar is the only game in town for that. It's still more than 50% of global reserves. Most trade is still settled in dollars. I forget the name of it. It was like the New Horizon Bank or something like that. The Chinese started a new bank for the purpose of BRICS. And then within like 8 months, that bank was being forced to sell dollar bonds because they were short of dollars for settlement of trade. So there is a lot of energy around like the de-dollarization and the BRICS. And there's been a lot of fake headlines. Any day now, this gold-backed currency is going to come back. Nobody is putting their currency back on a gold standard if we're heading towards World War III, because the only way to pay for World War III will be to loot your populace via inflation and money printing. And you can't do that on a gold standard. The Russians won't do it. The Chinese won't do it. The Indians, the US, nobody's about to do that.
Well, on that note,
that's my optimistic appraisal.
that optimistic appraisal. So you think now, I don't disagree with you that they would like to take us to war. That's where it always goes, right? Once they debase the currency and they can't get away with it anymore, then, well, we all have to go to war, and that distracts the population, and then they reset onto the new order. I get all of that. But what if people don't want to do it? What if, because a lot of what I cover today is about the market and the culture and how it's, in my opinion, way more powerful than these heads of state, these people who are trying to kind of manipulate and manufacture conflicts, whether it's on, social media and in conservative media or in Venezuela. I mean, if you have a population of people who are just not going to play and say, listen, we're not doing this. We don't want to do this. I mean, are they going to be able to take us to war as easily as you think? And do you think that somehow we can evade that and get back to some kind of quasi sanity? Or are we just going to have to go to war? Is that all, is that kind of just the history of the cycle of humanity? And that's just where we're going. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Well, let me preface by saying I'm certainly not volunteering or signing up to go, be fed into that meat grinder. I got kids. I don't have that luxury. So I don't like the idea of sending somebody else in my place. I also don't like the idea of feeding the Taiwanese to the Chinese Communist Party either. They're a struggling democracy, and I believe the Chinese Communist Party is an inherently evil organization. So I don't like the idea of doing nothing either. I hope there's a way to avoid it, but the Chinese seem hell-bent on doing this. And everything I've read says 2027 they're going to go, because it gets harder after that for them to do it because of their own population collapse and economic problems.
Yeah.
As far as the whole, what if there was a war and nobody showed up thing, that'd be encouraging. Like if both sides are like, yeah, we're gonna do this, and everybody just says up yours, no, I'd love it.
Let's go.
I'd
Let's
love
do
it.
that. Let
Unfortunately, we kind of showed them how easily manipulated we are
Yeah.
with the vid, didn't we? We showed how easy it is to get us to inform on our neighbors or fire people because they won't do what we want, or silence people and make them afraid to
COVID.
say
Yep.
things that it obviously didn't come from somebody eating a bat at a wet market, but like
Right.
so. I wish.
Yeah.
I wish that we could say no, we're not going to do it, and that would be that.
You
I'd
know,
love to be wrong about that.
okay, this is what I love about the Americans. There was so much to hate about Americans during the vid, as you call it, COVID. What I love is that a very uniquely American phenomenon was that 30% to maybe 40% of Americans who said, oh, hell no to the shot, right? Despite billions of dollars in propaganda, coercion, manipulation, I mean, brute tactics by the Biden administration. And there was a very large percentage of Americans who just said, you know what, we're not going to play. Like, we're calling your bluff. We're not going to play. And you can take my job. You can take my reputation. People lost a lot, to reject that shot. And I thought that was the beginning. Like, that was the first spark of, and now, like, watching Americans reject the political circus, beginning to understand about the two-party fraud and the us versus them, as you point out, rather than the D's versus the R. I feel like people are just picking up on this psyops really fast these days. And there have been a lot of attempts to get us embroiled in certain wars. I mean, there was a big push to get us involved with Israel and their strikes on Gaza, and every time they trot that out, the American people are like, oh, hell no, we're not doing it. So that gives me a little bit of hope, right? That this could be a snowball effect, and you could have an actual, not the fake awakening that was like a couple years ago, but a true renaissance where people do begin to really see what's going on and just simply withdraw their consent. And that's my last statement. We have to go in a minute, but I'll let you respond to that, and then we'll drive people to your platforms and finish out. But your thoughts?
That would be nice. That would be very nice. Part of my nuclear training, I used to work in nuclear power. I always assumed the worst in every scenario, and it was
Yeah.
drilled into my head.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, assuming the worst in every scenario in the 2020s, you envision some pretty awful scenarios there. I'd
Well, a lot
love
of
to
them
be
played
wrong
out.
about that. I
Yeah.
would love to be wrong about that. Let's hope so. Let's hope I'm
Well,
wrong about all that.
and that the famous last words. I mean, very often I, I hope I'm wrong and things turn out, but it's like, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. Like, I really had, when COVID happened, I was like, holy crap. They're going to be marching tanks down the middle of the street. They're going to be ripping us out. They're going to be putting us in quarantine centers. And COVID was bad. Let's not sugarcoat it. But like, it could have been a lot worse than the way that I envisioned it. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for now. And listen, as we prepare for the financial economic version of 2020, which is what I think is coming, I think you think it's coming too, and there I agree with you. I think that's the play. The play is the only thing that we can do: prepare ourselves as best we can, gold and silver, prepare to help our own communities, and throw every single wrench we can into their plans from, that bottom up local level. And then, you got to leave it up to God. There's really not a lot we can do after that. But I'm looking forward to working with you in the new year, because I think you're going to become a very, very, very important voice. You already are, but I think you're going to get exponentially bigger in the next 2 years because of your willingness to tell the truth. So thank you, Jack Gamble, for everything that you've done.
You're very welcome. And sure, I'll take it. If you think exponential growth, sign me up.
Well, I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to make it happen because your voice needs to be out there. So important. And I remember finding, medical freedom doctors in the dark days of COVID, and like, okay, we have someone telling the truth, and like cobbling them together, these voices, like, that's power, it's organization. And you're one of those voices. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in 2026. You have a great holiday, okay?
You too. Merry Christmas, Shannon. Appreciate it.
All right, that's Jack Gamble. You can follow him on the twit His handle is at JG_nuke. That is JG_nuke. Lots to discuss today, or that we did discuss. We will hash it out tomorrow. I'll get some of your comments and some of your thoughts on all of this on tomorrow's show. But appreciate all of you being with us here today on the Shannon Joy Show. Make sure that you sign up on my website for the SJ newsletter, www.theshannonjoy.com. That's theshannonjoy.com. Sign up today. We'll be back tomorrow to do it all again on the Shannon Joy Show.